legalization to voter registration, Maria Elena has done more than report the news. She has been pushing us for decades to create the news. She recently told me, "I don't feel my job is to report the news, but to empower our community." Maria Elena was active decades ago pushing the political establishment and asking the right questions about Latinx representation. I met Maria Elena in 2016 when she was covering the Latinx vote. I'm sure that Maria Elena will agree that the big lesson of the 2016 elections is that stories matter. Latinos were disproportionately targeted online, and disinformation campaigns by extremists were aimed to spread division and undermine the Latinx vote. In 2020, let us be clear, we need massive voter education to identify and counter disinformation online and offline with the truth. And that is why we need truth tellers like Maria Elena Salinas. For her distinguished career, Maria Elena has won many awards, including the Mickey Leland Humanitarian Award and the Emmy Awards. But what impresses me the most about Maria Elena, even with her fame and her success, is that she has never forgotten her roots. She speaks and leads with integrity, and she takes time to develop others in our community to find their own power. To me, Maria Elena is a real-life Wonder Woman. Hermanos y hermanas, please join me in welcoming a great American truth teller, our inspiration and trailblazer, Maria Elena Salinas.
Thank you so much. In reality, te pasaste. I think that that introduction was a little bit too kind. But anyway, I am honored to be here, and I am honored to receive this very important recognition, but more importantly, to be able to participate in this plenary session. You know, I was thinking of what I'm going to say, and I know that maybe some of you have heard me in other events talking about how I got started and how my passion came about when I started working at Channel 34 many years ago in the early 80s when I was 5 years old and decided to stay here. But you know, I said what I really want to say, and what popped to mind is really what I want to say. And it was growing up, I remember my father always used to say, if you can make a difference in someone's life, do. You know, I know that my father did with his family and with the people that he worked with in his professional life. And my father was an intellectual, yet he was never successful in business. He did a lot of different jobs. Any of you who have read my book in the past know that in his before life he had been a Catholic priest. But during the time that we lived in Los Angeles, he was a professor, he was a real estate salesman, he was an accountant. When he was a real estate salesman, my father wrote a book. It was a guide for buyers because he believed that buyers need to be guided so that they would not fall prey to unscrupulous salespeople. He used all of his savings, everything that he had saved up to that point, to be able to publish that book and give it away. During the time that my father was an accountant, his clients were small businesses, mostly in East Los Angeles, and he would charge them minimum fees for their service. And these are businesses, and I remember asking him, you know, why don't you charge a little bit more? And when I mean minimum fees, I mean $25, $30, $50. And he would tell me that he didn't want to cut into their meager profits. When my father was ill and nearing, you know, the end of his life, he grew very concerned with the fact that he had not been successful in business and that he would not be able to inherit anything to his daughters when he passed. Well, you know, what he didn't realize is that he left us the best possible inheritance a father could leave. His example of selflessness. You know, this was probably the most valuable gift. He left us an inheritance of a social conscience. It's philanthropy without money. His words have always resonated with me. If you can make a difference in someone's life, do. And it fills my heart with joy when I see so many people through so many organizations that are doing just that, making a difference. You know, some can afford to dig into deep bank accounts and donate for good causes, and others donate something just as valuable, if not more, their time, their effort, their knowledge, their experience, their voice, or their platform to give others a forum to use their own voices. It's all philanthropy, and it all makes a difference in someone's life. In today's plenary session, we will hear from people using their knowledge, their expertise, their commitment, their passion, their platforms to make a difference in our community, to empower our community, because they care, because they realize that we can accomplish more when we come together for a common cause, because they know that a strong community leads to strong families, to children that thrive, to young adults that become leaders themselves, and it all makes this country, our country, truly great. So in the next couple of hours, be prepared to be informed, empowered, and inspired. And be prepared also with your questions. We will have someone with a microphone going around the room. Don't be shy to ask any questions of our panelists. And let's get started and bring them up. Thank you very much. Well, with the idea that all politics is local, we are going to begin our panel discussion with a group of representatives from organizations that work in their communities to empower their communities. And let's begin with Alex Gomez, Executive Director of Lucha. Arizona. Thank you, Alex. Jimena Hartsock, co-founder and president of Phone to Action. President of the Hispanic Federation. And Akila Wallace, Executive Director of Faith in Texas. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. You know, there's so much at stake. Oh, the music and everything. This is really well produced and choreographed. Now, in the beginning, I think the first thing that we have to talk about is you all represent very important organizations and very different organizations, but with the same goal, which is to empower our community. Please explain what approach that each one of your organizations has to reach that goal. We can begin with you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. This is my first year at HIP, and I'm super excited to be able to share with you all the work that we do at Lucha. I'm the daughter of immigrants, grew up in California during Prop 187, which was the same as our SB 1070 in Arizona during 2010, which was a racial profiling law. I started working within the organizations and as a community organizer because I kept seeing the terrible policies that would rip apart our families, and from my own father's experience. And so for us at Lucha, important is to listen to our members. We're a statewide organization, member-led, dues-paying, and we focus on economic justice because we convened a meeting with our members, and even though SB 1070 was important, the racial profiling law, there were other issues that were plaguing their families, like not being able to make ends meet. So our organization in 2016, along with other partners from Arizona, Mi Familia Vota, that are in the house, we're able to increase the minimum wage to $12 by 2020, so next year we'll reach that goal, which we're really excited about.
So my name is Elena Salinas. I am a native of Chile. I moved here a few years ago, and I am the co-founder of a technology company called Phone to Action. And you may have not heard about Phone to Action, but you definitely have seen our tools behind some of the largest movements in the country, if not the world. We power the technologies behind the Women's March, climate, advocacy of Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, including, some of the most nuanced advocacy campaigns out there, like DJI Trons and Tesla, SpaceX, and many others. We have the honor to work with organizations as historical as LULAC and as trailblazing as Mi Familia Vota. And we have a ton of clients that work on immigration issues. It's software. What we build, we write software, and we license this software to organizations that are trying to make a difference by making it easier for people to connect with their lawmakers and express their opinions about legislative and regulatory change.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. So I run a Hispanic Federation. We are an organization that is focused primarily on community-based organizations. We were founded by community-based organizations to support their work. We represent 115 affiliates today. A lot of the work is around capacity building for those organizations, which are very local, grassroots, and we do a lot of public policy advocacy to support the work that they're doing. We do a lot of programming to support the work that they're doing. Most importantly, our groups will tell you, we give them a lot of money. And on an annual basis, it's close to $5 million at this point. And that's essential because these are the groups that are really, again, driving change in our communities at a local level.
Thank you very much. Akira?
Hello. I work with Faith in Texas, and we're a fast-growing, multiracial, multi-faith grassroots movement where we're organizing lay people and clergy from mosques, churches, and synagogues who are united across values with the goal of working together for racial, economic, and social justice. And I'm here today on behalf of Maria Robles and Julio Acosto, who are wonderful organizers with our team, who are working directly with their Catholic and Christian churches and unifying with other faiths to move their communities to action in North Texas and Texas, because we believe that we can ultimately change the dominant narrative of how faith is seen and heard in Texas politics and specifically in the South, when we begin to mobilize people and unify them across their shared stories and lived experiences.
Thank you very much. Now, feel free, please, any of you, to jump in and comment on anything that you hear from the other participants. Now that you explained to us what it is that each one of your organizations does, tell us, what do you think is the biggest hurdle in reaching your goals? Any one of you can answer. Can begin.
I'll briefly jump in. For me, I will say the biggest hurdle is investment in Latino-led organizing work. As the executive director of Faith in Texas, I've seen that we have an influx of dollars coming to us to support criminal justice work that primarily supports our Black-led work. However, there's a void in a disinvestment in the work that is being led by my Latino leaders and our organizers. And so it is important for us to begin to see the intersectionality between the two issues, and that, you know, those who are being incarcerated or being funneled into the mass incarceration systems are just as is the same as those who are being funneled into detainment centers in Texas. And so it is important for the funding communities, whether that's foundation, corporations, and more specifically, those on the ground, the individual donors like myself, that we engage in investing in this work so that we can begin to build the power that we really need to see.
In Arizona, very similar to that, dovetail. What we're finding is that funders have made a decision, or philanthropy has made a decision of, for a specific constituency or for a specific state, these are the dollars that we're going to allocate because that's part of our strategic calculus, rather than really allowing the groups to be the strategic drivers and be able to provide the vision for their state. So in Arizona, we have funding for Latino community, but we are having a really difficult time being able to fund our smaller grassroots organizations that focus hyper-locally, and also our Black-led organizations.
Mm-hmm. Jose, in your case, what is the biggest hurdle that you have in just reaching the potential of your goal?
Sure. Well, I think it's going to continue on this thread right around resources. We were created because our group, our sector, our agencies were undercapitalized, under-resourced, understaffed, underappreciated, under everything, right? And that continues today. I mean, the fact is that we don't get our fair share of resources, and that impacts everything. Pick any issue, Marilena. Education, immigration, access to healthcare, census, any entrenched issue that we deal with as a society, you have to run that issue through the Latino community. It has to be. It's 20% of the population overall. And in many parts of this country, we represent the majority. And yet, we continue to be systemically underfunded, under-resourced, undercapitalized, and they expect our groups to work miracles. They do. They give us a penny and they say, well, we want you to now mobilize 10,000 people with this penny that we're giving you. And it's a real problem because it has prevented us from exercising self-determination in terms of our community. There's not an investment in authentic indigenous leadership, and that affects just about everything. I mean, so every single issue when we're talking about, there is a structural discrimination that exists that prevents us from really, again, doing some of the things that are really important in our community. And despite that, I should say, despite that, we have worked miracles. But we need to be very, very clear that we need to hold philanthropy broadly accountable. And it's not just foundations. Foundations are a big part of that as well too, but it's also the private sector. It's also the way that individuals within our own community are supporting other nonprofits outside of the community, et cetera. So I think it's a conversation that impacts all of us, regardless of the issue that you're tackling.
So as an owner of a technology company, a few things. So one of them certainly is the lack of an ecosystem for technology entrepreneurs. The second one is the lack of talent, especially on the Hispanic community, to fill the engineering gaps that we have, talent that are many. Every time we try to hire someone, the pool of Hispanic engineers, of software developers is extremely low or non-existent, and yet Hispanics are the fastest to adopt a newer technology. So there is a huge gap between the education our kids are receiving and the preparation for the future of work is just not there. And the third thing, seeing our clients often have to fight with donors that are still using very old metrics. They have to fight to get the budget to buy new technologies, to try new things. They often tell us, can you help us come to a board meeting with us and try to educate them about the importance of sticking with the technology and integrating technologies, because change doesn't happen overnight. And a lot of this, it comes represented in the opportunity you were talking about, that a lot of small organizations do not have the fair shot to use technologies or any new approach they may want to try, because they want to be safe and not risk a donor funding. So I think that is a lot that we can do with the community to support the change that organizations often try to drive.
It's very important, of course, for organizations such as yours and companies such as yours to have the necessary funding or the necessary means to be able to operate. But when it comes to the final goal, which is to get communities engaged, communities involved, civically involved, what is the most important thing, or how important is it, and how difficult is it to get people interested? After all, we're working for them, we're working for our community. And no matter how much money we raise, if they're not responding, then they're not reacting to our message, then it's not working.
I would say that our communities are extremely engaged. And in Arizona, as an example, in 2010, we were 4% of the voting population, and now we're 23%. But the challenge is that we have to do that type of engagement on a shoestring budget every single year. And even with that, we were able to turn Arizona into a battleground state. But again, that's on a shoestring budget. For swing voters, for white swing voters, on average last year, $22 billion were spent. Not even $1 billion went to campaigns targeting communities of color and Latinos in particular. And that's an alarming number. And I think for philanthropy, being able to identify where those gaps are and work with community organizations to be able to identify solutions and get us into the room, I think is a big piece of the conversation that we need to get to.
Yeah, I think that engagement really comes down to, you only have a few minutes sometimes to capture a person or less. And so often efforts with the Latino community miss what the Latino community already engages with. And so we know that the number one user of text message is our community, number one, by far. And then we give very old approaches to engage Latinos, and we use paper and pencil and things like that, and which is not likely gonna succeed at the same level. Pearl Jam last year, before the midterm election, did a concert in Missoula, Montana. Out of all of the new people that he was able to engage in his Get Out the Vote tour that he did, he got 81% of them activating via text message on a call to action from a state in Missoula, Montana. And guess what? Missoula, Montana had the highest turnout of voter participation ever in history, that year. And so that is really, there's a lot of lessons learned about using data and using technology, and now with machine learning and everything that we have at our disposal to understand and meet our community where they are. But unfortunately, we don't do that.
Let me follow up on what you're saying right now. Of course, it's important to use technology to get to as many people as possible, but you have to develop the right message to get the right results. So, how do you do that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. So I see, we work with organizations, over 600 organizations. We have millions and millions of users, more than 44 millions of messages sent to Congress and lawmakers across the country. Every minute, there are thousands of people taking action here and abroad. And we see the data, and what often we see sometimes is strategists that are not part of the community, the Hispanic community, crafting messaging for the Hispanic community, and we see sometimes our own clients debating on the why we're doing that, but somebody brought somebody in from political work and thought that political work was translatable into advocacy. So I think one of the things that we have to do is really give our own people that we know have done this, they understand the community, the opportunity to succeed, and not replace them by saying, okay, we're going to get this technology and we're going to get this agency to manage this account. Instead saying we're going to get the technology, but we're going to still work with whoever that person is that has been here for a while, understands the community, and close the gaps that may be there, but have the right messaging. That's what I see a tremendous gap. Agencies are making a lot of money out of our community on grassroots because of this supposed to expertise that they bring that is actually learnable. And I think, I love the question also, Maria Elena, because I think when we look at this crowd, that you actually have a lot of power to connect the dots. Here is where we also have to highlight the successes that exist, and there are a lot of them, but sometimes it takes panels like this to understand, to learn what you're doing, and what you're doing. We can do a better job of that.
And do you want to jump in, Jose?
Yeah, no, thank you. So I think, just to echo what my colleagues here have been saying, look, Latinos are hungry. We are hungry for information. Often we don't get it, or we get it, sort of much later than other communities, but we are hungry, but it has to be digestible, right? It has to be things that resonate. So if we talk about the census, and we go into any community, if we went into Charlotte in North Carolina and we said, well, there's $800 billion at stake here in this community, that, that number is just something that, it's just too big. What does that mean for me? What does it mean for me? Well, it means that you may lose your senior center. It means that your roads may not get fixed. It means that from an educational standpoint, this is going to impact whether we have certain offerings in the school or not. It impacts you directly, and it has to be that way. Everything is local. I mean, everything should be local in that sense when we're engaging and mobilizing and organizing our communities. And it really has to be our community-based organizations that are the main driver, the main point of connection. They are the trusted sources. If your kid's not doing well in school, you're going to turn to the community group. If the park's dilapidated, who's going to fix it? Well, it's going to be the group that's going to sort of organize people to do it. If you're having problems with your landlord, on and on and on and on. It is those groups that you turn to, that you trust, that, again, ultimately are going to be the drivers, the social glues of these communities, and we need to empower them. And that's why resources are really important. But also, I think that, we don't need to do a multitude of focus groups because we do them every day.
Yeah.
I mean, we see our community every day. They're walking into our centers. So we know what resonates. We know what sticks. And again, I think it's really important that as we're thinking about messages, well, Maria Elena, you do this every day, every night, right, on the news, that our community really desperately needs this information.
Right.
But we need it in a way that is going to resonate with me at home, with my family and my community. And again, I sort of echo again how important community groups are to be able to do that, right? They really are the principal source to do it, and oftentimes are not empowered to do it.
Right.
Very quick follow-up, very quick. So storytelling makes a difference for lawmakers. When lawmakers are gonna pass on a bill, they get too many letters that all look the same. When they get a story, a personal story, they pay attention to that. And that's what the Hispanic community has. we have so many stories to tell.
I'm going to comment something about that, but Akila, I want to go to you. What is Faith in Texas theory of change, and how do we better organize not just Latinos, but all people of color in the South and the faith community?
Yeah, so the unique space that Faith in Texas is able to hold is that we primarily are focused on the spaces of which thousands of Latinos and Black people congregate, whether it's for Mass or for their Sunday service, and that is in their churches. And that is very particular as it relates to how we can begin to engage and reach these audiences in Texas and in the South. When you have individuals, captured audiences who are coming together with shared values, and they're coming together for their ministries or for their worship, many of these individuals are the most engaged in their community by way of their faith community in their church. And then their work begins to resonate into the community by way of their work. And so with Faith in Texas, we're focused on reaching the people in these large spaces, because we're in the Bible Belt. I mean, there's thousands of people who are flocking to these spaces. Intentionally, we're able to reach them, but then also oftentimes the individuals that they can hear from are their clergy. They're from their pastors, from their bishops. And so by us beginning to train and mobilize them and help them to understand how they can connect their faith beliefs and traditions with the issues that are most directly impacting their lay leaders, their members, their congregants, and the communities that are directly immediately surrounding their facilities, then we're able to empower them.
What response do you get from them? I mean, do you feel that there's a united front among a lot of these preachers that are they providing the same message to all, or do they have their own agendas?
Yeah, so we're seeing a shift. We're seeing a major shift, given the current state of this, this country, and specifically in Texas, and that as more people who are experiencing the trauma day to day are coming to their clergy and voicing the pains and the hurts that they're experiencing on behalf of themselves and their children and their communities. The clergy now have to listen, and are beginning to think, how do I move beyond just my holy text or whatever my word may be, and saying, you know what, I get it. How do we love thy neighbor? How do we apply the general concepts of organizing and humanity with our faith beliefs? And so, yes, we do see a powerful movement taking place, and this is an interfaith movement. So we're seeing clergy from all faith traditions, Muslims, Jewish, Christian, of all denominations, beginning to wake up and say, you know what? It was often many historic Black movements that were led by clergy and leaders in the civil rights movement who were associated with the church. So not only are they beginning to wake up and realize that they not only have to be informed and educated, but it's important for their people who are in the pews, which are predominantly women, which are predominantly Latinas and Black women, that they are informed and educated to begin to see how they can minister in a social justice lens. And then also I think it's important to, that we hold our faith communities accountable in the ways in which they are investing in this work as well, because they are receiving a significant amount of percentage of our income, and they should be investing in this movement and in our efforts directly as well.
Maria Elena, so I think it's really important that we fight the narrative that Latinos are apathetic, that Latinos are not engaged, right? Latinos are. We need to be engaged. And I would say, I think our friend from the Latino Institute Policy, the Latino Policy Institute at UCLA, mentioned that the turnout in Latino precincts were 3 times higher than white precincts during the last election. That shows you how engaged we are. And again, to the point that all of my colleagues have made, that is with pennies, right? We get pennies to mobilize and organize. And by the way, and candidates don't, obviously put in money to sort of outreach and connect with us, but still, you're 3 times higher than white precincts, right? Latinos turned out for their last elections. We will continue to do that if we continue to be engaged in a serious way. Imagine the possibilities, right? If, in fact, there was real resources available in our communities to be able to do that work, the census work, and so many other things that are really important.
And Alex, I wanted to ask you about that, because really Arizona, together with Nevada and some other states, can be a poster child for what is a successful campaign to get people motivated to register to vote and go out and vote. What do you attribute that to? I mean, what percentage of it is people just fed up and say, okay, enough is enough, I'll go away? And what percentage was the result of the field work and grassroots organization?
It's the unrelenting work of community organizations that have said, this is not just about a campaign election cycle, this is about organizing throughout the years, but more importantly, investing in young people. So those young people that voted, or that were the ones that were doing the field work in 2010 that were 8 are now the 18-year-olds that are voting. And those are the people that are going and knocking on doors. So we created, to the point also of who the messenger is very important. Our young people were the ones that were going to the doors and talking to the Latino community about their own story and how they were impacted by the terrible politics of the state. And they were the ones that were invigorating the folks at the door to actually get out to vote and remind them that they actually matter in the political process. So the victories that we're seeing in this last election cycle were 8 years in the making of unrelenting work to make sure that our community showed up at the doors.
Right, and it's having a very strong effect on young people.
Absolutely.
And of course, then people use technology. That's the best way of getting to them. I mean, is there a way, do you have metrics? Is there a way to measure whether some of these campaigns are getting to these young people and that they are responding in a positive way to them?
So we did a study, a 3-year longitudinal study, we released it just like 10 days ago. And we follow over 200 organizations that use our platform from 2016 to 18. And we saw a lot of trends, day of the week that works, time of the day, etc. And one thing that we saw is that 65% of people look at a philanthropy type campaigns on mobile first. They may go and take action, donate, or write a letter to a lawmaker from a computer later, but the very first time they look at it, 65% is mobile first on iPhone or Android phones. So that's a phone. 5% on iPads, the rest is desktops, and 147 people did it on a PlayStation. So from PlayStation, and they take action from PlayStation, because if you play these games, like sometimes you use PlayStation for the internet, and that's how they do it. So
that kind of PlayStation,
yeah.
Like the gaming.
The gaming PlayStation. And so that is.
I'm with the millennials. I'm with the phone.
With 5G though, we're all gonna go smaller. So we may be speaking with like little chips very soon. But yeah, there are a lot of metrics. So there are. We tend to. Think about millennials, they're all the same, and the Gen Z all the same, because that's kind of like what we're being told. I used to think, for example, that Mondays were a bad day for some things, and they're not. So I think what we have to look is at what the data says, and do a lot of A/B testing, and see what's so beautiful, and people don't take action on those. Sometimes simplicity. You said this is so ugly. Why does that works? Because that person understood it, like you said. So we know that. We know that Tuesdays and Thursdays are best days for advocacy emails before 7 p.m. Anything after 7 p.m. doesn't work. Nothing on Saturdays and Sundays. For Twitter, everything shuts off at 4 p.m. on Fridays. Nothing on weekends. Facebook, though, shuts off at 9 p.m. on Sundays. So Facebook people continue to use in the evenings and the weekends.
Can you please share all that information with all of us? Have it on a graphic? Can we airdrop it like right now and everybody get it? Yeah. Is the microphone ready out there so that we can begin with your questions? We'll take your questions now. Don't be shy. And the microphone ready? Okay. Over here on this side with the white dress.
So my question is regarding the narrative change and storytelling that you were talking about. I know that there's movement going on around using arts to do this. How does that show up in the work that you do?
Absolutely. For Arizona, art has been pivotal for being able to fight back against racist laws like SB 1070. It was the banners, it was the pictures of the families that were front and center, as people also had a clipboard registering people to vote. And it allowed for the expression of the community to be able to share their pain in a different way and also heal through that art.
Yeah, and let me echo that, because I think, so we do a lot of work in Puerto Rico, and one of the things, obviously, we invest in the recovery and food and water essentials that you need. But at one point we said, well, we need to invest in the arts, right? Because it is the expression of a people. It's the identity that they connect to. and in ways that you're in pain, you're suffering, you're being harmed. No better way of expressing that through the arts and connecting people through the arts. And so, as important as technology is, and it's obviously vitally important, but people power, sort of people expression, is even a bigger sort of driver of connecting people and mobilizing people to act. So we think the arts are critically important.
You can combine things. It's not one or the other. So like we know that anything with an image has a 15% higher increase in conversion rate than something without an image. So text message, add a little art piece or an email, and you'll do better.
Very good. Next question. Raise your hand. Back there.
So I don't have a question so much as a comment, but if no one else has a question, I just want to say I could not agree more with all of this. My name is Michelle Mendez. I'm with Clinic Catholic Legal Immigration Network, Inc. And one of the things that we have done, just to echo everything that you have said, is we have started 2 Facebook groups for immigrants who have recently crossed the border. We have one specifically for separated families. They're all in a closed Facebook group, and we share videos with them, for example, on knowing who's an attorney and who's not an attorney, what questions to ask. Just videos about everything and anything that you can think of. We give them referrals to attorneys, to social services through this Facebook group, all in Spanish, monitored through an attorney. And we even did like a Christmas drive through Amazon. So we linked the 2 together, Amazon and Facebook, and we made sure that those kids in that Facebook group got an actual Christmas gift after all the horrors they went through because of this government. So wanted to share that.
So yeah, thank you. No, you should jump in, Keela. No. So I actually wanted to say that, so we had an immigration convening, a small group of us yesterday, and we were talking about the state of play around immigration in the country today. And we were saying that part of what the right is doing, part of what the anti-immigrant movement is doing, is trying to depersonalize us, dehumanize us, right, in any way possible. The video piece, right, the bringing reality, people reality, changes that, right? It prevents them from doing that. So we talked about if you had a 4-year-old from Ghana who knocked on your door, right, who was hungry, who didn't have clothes, who needed shelter, refuge, and support, 99.9% of Americans or human beings would not deny that child, right, refuge and food and support, and would probably take care of them for a really long time, if not forever. What President Trump and his sycophants have done is really, again, trying to depersonalize who we are. So the storytelling piece is so critically important, that we tell our story, we tell our narrative in a way that's personal. This is about a child that is knocking on my door at 2 a.m. in the morning. This isn't about the hordes of people that are coming in trying to undermine our way of life, which is what they want us to believe at the end of the day. And so the storytelling piece is really important, which is why I think if you can do that through technology, if you can do that through people power, I think that's really effective.
I think also just to add that being able to connect people to share stories with each other, and then it doesn't become extractive, but it's actually healing through understanding that other members of the community have also gone through the same issue.
Alone,
Absolutely.
And
that helps strengthen. Yeah,
go right ahead. And so, yes, the storytelling. So what we're doing is through the churches. So we brought a group of Latinos to a predominantly Black church during their Bible study, and so they had that ability to tell their stories of their experiences, with the immigration process, with those who were dreamers, who were speaking on behalf of their family members, and those who were undocumented. And so through there, we was able to begin the bridging. Through this deep listening, because often, part of this dominant narrative is that they want to keep us divided. And so, when you have Black people, in Texas who are saying, well, we don't have jobs because, the immigrants, or Latinos are taking all of them, that's just wrong, right? But it's also important, in the Latino community for them to understand that, yes, the fears that Black people experience when the police are, come behind them as they're driving. These are actually shared experiences of the tension and the traumas that we're all experiencing. And that is where we're beginning to come together and bridging across race, economic status, class. None of those things matter. At the end of the day, when your skin color and creates, barriers where you're feeling threatened or harmed, or your lived experiences is hurtful, then that is where we come together and how we begin to change the narrative on the ground. And that is when we're going to start building some significant power, especially in the states where we already know the majority is minority. And we're about to take things over. And when we unite across our faith values and say, I'm going to love you no matter what, because my faith calls me to do that, we're going to see a powerful change in this country. And when we shift that narrative, and how it's traditionally seen and heard, when you talk about faith, it's going to be a whole new ball game. So I hope all of you join in and think about how your faith community is showing up and supporting organizations, that are all here and then on this stage today.
Any other questions out there? No? Going once, going twice. I'm giving you one last chance. There's a hand right there. There you go.
Well, my question is, you can ask your question up there. You're in a room full of funders. Share with us how can we support the work with, obviously doing grant making, but outside of dollars?
I would say that for me, one of the struggles that we have within the organization is that we often have to tailor our metrics and our strategy to what the funders see as the path. And we have our own strategies of being able to reach our communities, the metrics that matter to us, and that often funders are not looking at leadership development. And so for us, it is actually about redefining those metrics and listening to the community and saying actually, you tell us what you need and give us a plan that's real to you.
I mean, 3 magical words for funders that are here: general operating support. That is exactly what our groups need, and many of our groups that again have been historically undercapitalized, under-resourced, need that level of support, right? So when you give them money for a program and it's specific to something else, it never covers their overhead, it never allows them to grow, it never allows them to build the core infrastructure that they need to be viable and sustainable long term. So general operating support.
And I would also challenge you to, anyone who's interested in supporting a Latino giving circle. As the founder of Heritage Giving Fund, which is the first Black giving circle in the state of Texas, it was important that I understood the values of connecting with women, like-minded women that look like me, and us pooling our resources together. No, we're not wealthy, and we're making contributions as low as $500 individually. However, I do know that there's an opportunity for us to energize and mobilize those who are grassroots in our Latino communities, and being able to say that if I can just contribute $10 a month or $15 a month, and I pool that together with 50 other members of my community, we can begin to fund our own movement. So my challenge would be, if anyone's interested in providing a match gift for these type of giving circles and giving opportunities for individuals to pool their own resources together, matched up with yours, to double the impact, and I'm here for it.
I don't have a nonprofit, but I own a technology company, and less than 2% of venture capital goes to women, owners of technology companies, and out of that, 1.5 is white, the rest is Asian, and some African American and Latinas. They want to get it back. And they want to get it back in multiples. So they give you 100, they want 500 back in 3-4 years. And there is no track record of women owning technology companies that are unicorn, or they actually exited or IPO. And so there is a little bit of that, the risk that investors have to take blind because there is no track record. But at the same time, we do a very bad job highlighting the work of technology women. There's no, for example, there's no effort in the country right now to do a catalog of how many women or Latinos in general own technology companies. So there's no one there. So if you want to connect with someone, there's really nowhere to go. And so what the philanthropy community, maybe not the same that the venture capital community is generally part of an ecosystem that is much larger, that has to change. We just closed a round. We closed a $5.1 million round about 2 years ago, and we just closed a round with a $700 million fund. So our company exited a lot of the stock, which is very almost unheard of for any women owning a technology company. But you didn't see anything in the news. You didn't see anything anywhere. We couldn't get anyone to cover it. And it was really crazy to me that was the case. And so, you, Maria Elena, you've done such a tremendous job supporting the community when you didn't have to do it. At times that probably wasn't even convenient to you. We need more people that have power to the microphone to highlight nonprofits and anyone making a difference in the Hispanic community, because that narrative that you're talking about is hurting us all. The fact that all of us, they don't anyone think of Hispanics, as surgeons, as lawyers making a difference, nonprofit owners or owners of companies. They're always thinking of us as doing those jobs that we all done before, but that doesn't, those jobs don't define us anymore. So there's a lot more that we can do to change that persona that we have become.
Thank you very much, Elena. We have the last question over here.
Thank you. I just had a question about if you have any suggestions around how to host a successful debate watch party as we're going into the presidential primaries, and or any other sort of civic engagement house party type things that anybody could do.
That's a good question, because that has to be done at the local level, right?
Absolutely.
In your community, in your church, in your home, in the restaurant.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, I'll jump in and thank you for even thinking of doing that, because I think that's really super important. And I think you start at home, right? You start with family, you start with friends, and I think you start with the network of folks that you know, right? Everyone's on social media these days. It's fairly easy, but I think that, everything that we do at our groups is concentric circles. You start at home, right? Your network, and then you expand outwardly, right? Other people know other people, and so on and so forth. And I think it's really critically important to do it. I mean, community groups, that's what we do, right? And we're constantly convening people, and so when we think about, oh my God, we need to have 1,000 people in this room, right? You start at home, you start expanding little by little, and you get well beyond those numbers when you do it. And so thank you for thinking of it, and obviously encourage you to, I'm sure you're gonna have great success doing it, encourage you to continue to do it.
Great question.
People want to jump into those conversations also. Within our community gatherings, we bring food, and then we have a set of questions.
Food is always good.
There you go. Offer food.
We call it chilaquiles and chisme.
Yeah, chilaquiles and chisme, that's awesome.
So making it accessible and being able to make the dialogue accessible, and how our communities are, accustomed to talking about politics.
I will connect offline with present and online, and so again, that's where you can use technology with the human aspect together to amplify your watch party. Because in the past we used to think about we need 1,000 people to make noise. We don't. One person can make a lot of noise. Look at AOC on Twitter; she makes a lot of noise. So if you have 10 people, like you said, those 10 people, the impressions on Twitter and social media that you get out of 10 people are pretty large. Have someone in charge of social media. Don't take social media as something that you don't want to do because it's presumptuous. No, own it. Own it, because social media is one of the tools that you have available there that is free. That's number one. Number two, use some type of mechanism that you have there to get input. That is, Periscope was in the past. You have Facebook Live. You have all kinds of things. So you can get the online community to participate in something you may be doing at home. Bring the food, take pictures of those tamales, anything like that, and make a party also online.
Thank you so much. On that note, Jimena, Alex, Aquila, Jose, thank you so much for participating in this conference. Please, a big round of applause for them. Thank you very much. And we will get ready now for our second panel. You can come out this way, and also